dismantle Caesar's entire operation once again in order to save the kids. However, this is where we encounter another major difference in this scenario. You see, since the crew is much stronger now, they didn't need to train for 2 years, which means the time skip never happened. As a result, they would arrive on Punk Hazard much earlier than before and wouldn't meet Momonosuke or Kinemon. Luffy would be confused to see that Momo isn't on the island, but the rest of the crew would explain why. Anyway, after saving the children, the crew would then set their sights on dealing with the Flamingo at Dressrosa. However, there is a problem here as well. You see, since the Straw Hats arrived on Punk Hazard and Dressrosa too early, they wouldn't meet Law, which would make their mission on Dressrosa much harder. One good thing this time around is that they would infiltrate Dressrosa completely undetected, since the news regarding Caesar's capture wouldn't spread. Instead of goofing around like the last time, the crew would immediately try to free the Tontada and dismantle the weapons factories, while Luffy would go and challenge Doflamingo one-on-one. However, this wouldn't end very well for him. You see, the problem here is that Luffy isn't aware of Sugar's abilities, since the rest of the crew had saved him from her in the original timeline. So, yeah, Luffy would get turned into a toy instantly, without even touching the Warlord. So, it would be up to the other Straw Hats to deal with the situation. But could they do it? Well, I'm not sure if they could defeat Doflamingo on their own, but the good news is they wouldn't have to. And that's because they only needed to knock Sugar out, and considering that they managed to do it in the original timeline, they should be able to do it again. Once Sugar is defeated, Luffy would immediately spring back into action and easily finish Doflamingo using his overwhelming haki. This victory would then send shockwaves all around the globe, and the world government would want to catch the Straw Hats even more than before. However, the Marines wouldn't be the only ones chasing after them, since the Straw Hats would soon find themselves in the crosshairs of 2 Yonkos yet again. After briefly visiting Zoe and befriending the Minks, the crew would soon find themselves on Whole Cake Island. Now, you may be wondering, why would the crew even go to Whole Cake Island in this scenario? Well, even though they don't have to save Sanji this time around, Luffy would still want to stop by Whole Cake in order to grab Big Mom's road poneglyph, which he would need in order to become the Pirate King. So, with that goal in mind, they'd use Jinbei's experience to navigate through the islands in order to reach Whole Cake without any trouble and launch a surprise attack on the Emperor. And believe it or not, things would go mostly as planned. That's because despite Big Mom's overwhelming manpower, this version of the crew would be able to handle most of them with little to no difficulty. Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei would take down Big Mom's sweet commanders one at a time, while Luffy focuses on challenging her one-on-one. Meanwhile, Brook and Chopper would go off on their own to secure the poneglyph rubbish. Using the knowledge about his devil fruit, Luffy would successfully tap into Gear 5 to dispatch Big Mom, while Nami bribes Zeus into becoming her new slave. After Big Mom's defeat, the remaining Big Mom pirates would then retreat and vow to get payback for their humiliating loss. News of this sudden victory would rattle the world and send it into a frenzy soon after. Luffy would then be declared the 4th official Emperor of the Sea. Luffy and the crew would then continue their journey towards Wano, but they would suddenly get stopped by Ace. Remember, Ace didn't lose to Blackbeard in this version, so both he and Whitebeard would still be alive. After a brief chat with Luffy, Ace would ask him and the rest of the crew to come aboard Whitebeard's ship. After meeting Luffy, Whitebeard would immediately grow fond of him, same as he did during Marineford. However, it's here that Whitebeard would reveal his true reason for inviting the Straw Hats over, and that is to warn them about picking a fight with Kaido. However, it's Luffy we're talking about here, so of course he'd ignore Whitebeard's warning and tell him that he could fight whoever he wanted. This would make Whitebeard laugh, and seeing Luffy's determination, he would order Ace and Marco to go with the Straw Hats to Wano and help them in any way they could. It did take them some time, but the Straw Hats, along with Ace and Marco, would soon reach Wano's shore. Now, even though the Straw Hats are way stronger this time around, taking Kaido and his crew head-on would still be an impossible task. So, with Ace and Marco's help, they would carefully plan their attack, taking out Numbers and the Toby Ropo first in order to weaken the crew. Luffy and Ace would also work on a plan to free Yamato from her shackles, since she could help them in this fight as well. After making all necessary preparations, the Straw Hats, allied with the Wano Samurai, would launch a full-on attack on Kaido's forces. Although the Alliance did everything right, the sheer manpower of Kaido's crew would still pose a huge threat to them, and they would slowly start losing momentum. However, just as it seemed like the raid was going to fail, Luffy would notice a fleet of mysterious ships approaching the shore. As the ships got closer and closer, the Straw Hats would realize that it is actually Whitebeard's grand fleet. You see, although Whitebeard initially didn't want to risk a full-on war against Kaido, he couldn't just sit still and decided to risk it all to help the Straw Hats finally stop his tyranny once and for all. Seeing this would give a huge morale boost to everyone on the battlefield, and together with Whitebeard's forces, the tides of battle would quickly shift. In the middle of the chaos, Luffy Luffy would finally find a chance to engage Kaido head-on. And using his Gear 5 abilities, he would finally defeat the Emperor. After that, it wouldn't take long for the rest of the Beast Pirates to fall, and the land of Wano would finally be free again. Wow! I can't believe that all of these characters actually survived in this scenario.
With